For our self-portraits, we're going to be creating what we call a mono print to use in the background. Mono means one, and we're going to be using a printmaking technique called marker prints. Mono printing is when you lay down color or ink and you only get one print from it when you lay a paper on top of your ink. There are other printmaking techniques that you can reprint something over and over again, but in this technique, we're just going to be creating one print from every drawing that we design. To do your print for your background for your self-portrait, you're first going to choose if you'd like to do a small background or a large background, and that really just depends on how big your self-portrait is that you painted. Depending on your size, you're going to fill up that space on your tinfoil. So if you're using a small piece of paper, you're only going to fill up a small space. If you're using a large one, you can fill up a large space. I decided just to do like a rainbow order filled up the page. You guys can get more serious about your pattern, your design. You can make it like real stuff. The only thing is that I don't want you to include any words or numbers because they're going to be backwards when you go to print them. So if you do words or numbers, you need to make sure that you're writing them backwards, and that can be a little bit tricky. So I think it's probably best just to avoid that. The Mr. Sketch markers are brighter. However, I think that there's something in the chemicals that they don't want to sit on the tinfoil very well, so they didn't provide a very good print when I was finished. It was very streaky and you could see the lines from where I was drawing. You need to be careful that you're not putting your hand on your tinfoil while you're working, so your wrist needs to stay up in the air or you're going to wipe away this marker. This is also not something that can happen in 2 classes. It needs to happen right away. So make sure you're really focusing so that you can draw and print in the same class period. Like I said, I'm just doing like a rainbow design that fans out from one corner, but if you want to have a more detailed design, you absolutely can do that. When you're ready to print, you're going to get a spray bottle and wet your paper really well. The spray bottle I'm using in this video didn't give a very even spray, so I kind of had to use my hand to even the water out, but I have other spray bottles that spray much more evenly, and that's going to provide a better print for you. So just wet your paper, and then we're going to lay it on top of your design that you did on your tinfoil, and try your best to rub it gently. You need this paper to be flat, and it's going to pick up all the ink from your tinfoil to create your print. So we're going to rub all over until your ink transfers onto your paper. As I said earlier, the Mr. Sketch markers left sort of a streaky print that I wasn't very happy with. You can see all my lines, and the ink didn't come up very well, even though the colors are really bright. If you'd like to create a second print or go over your print, you can layer together, so you can go back in and redraw on that tinfoil and reprint on that paper or on a second paper if you'd like to try again. You can even create what's called ghost prints. So if you decide that you don't want to redraw on your color and you just want to pull what's left, you absolutely can do that. So I just got a small piece of paper, sprayed it, and I laid it on top of whatever was left on my tinfoil to see what kind of print that I was coming up with. So when we pull it up, it's still a little streaky, it's a little different, and I'm gonna pull from different places all over to see what happens. Printmaking is really cool because it's experimental. You don't always know what's gonna happen, but a lot of times it comes out with pretty beautiful results, even with a simple process. When you're finished with your tinfoil, you're just gonna get a damp paper towel and wipe all of your marker off. And then we're gonna save that piece of tinfoil for the next person. So please don't crumple these up. We're gonna save them for the next person so they can use them for their print. Just to show you a more solid and better example of how your marker print should look, I did another print not using the Mr. Sketch markers, but using the other markers that we have in the drawer. These colors didn't look as bright, but as you can see, they lay much more evenly on the tinfoil. They're not so streaky, and the oils in the markers don't like spread out and go away. So it's going to create a much more even print when we go to create our prints at the end. We're going to once again spray those papers so they're nice and damp, ready to absorb that ink, and lay it down on our design that we did on our tinfoil. Give it a nice even rub. And as you can see, this print turned out a lot more solid than the ones with the Mr. Sketch markers did. I wanted to create a more abstract design for this one, so I did pull prints from all different places on my tinfoil, so the color's sort of all over the place and not as organized. But like I said earlier, this is your design and you can create whatever background for your self-portrait that you'd like to. Once your prints are dry, you're going to figure out how you'd like to lay your self-portrait. So you could do it landscape or you could do a portrait. If you need me to crop or cut your print on the paper cutter to match the size of your self-portrait painting, I can do that. Lay it out wherever you'd like it, and when you're happy with how you have it laid, you can cut your self-portrait out, and then I can hot glue it onto your background for you so that you can be finished and photograph it for Artsonia. Just make sure that if your self-portrait is big and it doesn't fit on your small print, then maybe you'll need to use a larger print. So pay attention to how large your self-portrait is before you get started making your print so that you know exactly how big you need your work to be.